Well, hello again. This is Michael Wojcik with a Rochester City Council update for 7/31/13. This is kind of like part two, and what it is, I kind of set aside. I just wanted to have a little conversation about DMC and what the City Council has been doing on DMC. This is, and I got to preface this with saying that DMC is an amazing opportunity for the community. It gives us the ability to address a lot of issues we haven't been able to address as effectively in the past. And everybody in local government is 100% behind making this successful and making the Mayo Clinic successful. The devil is in the details, and what you saw this month was some very strong disagreement on the details. And I gotta say is to our two Mayo Clinic employees on the city council, that's Randy Staver and Mark Bilderbeck, but Randy Staver in particular, the community should be tremendously proud of the fact that these folks understand when they're representing the city of Rochester, they have the city of Rochester hat on and not the Mayo Clinic hat. And I think that came through pretty strongly here. Now, you may be aware that by a 6-1 vote, we put in place some articles of incorporation and some bylaws this month. The one no vote was Sandra Means, who was trying to make folks happy, but in this particular case, it just wasn't going to happen. I fully expect that our articles of incorporation and our bylaws could potentially change. And the reason why it was so important for us to pass this, and we did it in such a strong fashion with the City Council, is changes may be necessary, but now for a change to take place, it's going to happen in the public realm. If there's something in the bylaws or the articles of incorporation that Mayo Clinic does not like, they can bring that to us in a public meeting with all eyes watching, and we can discuss whether or not that needs to be changed. I have a lot of concerns about the secrecy of DMC. I've been fairly outspoken about that, and ultimately, while DMC is very exciting, my role as a community leader is not to get excited. My role as a community leader is to be the voice, checking to make sure that there is proper oversight in place and that we, the elected officials of Rochester, are going to be making the decisions that influence the development and redevelopment in the future of Rochester, and not a private organization and a private board. This was a point of contention. It goes back to even when this was up at the state legislature, and we worked very hard and really tip of the hat to Kim Norton, because she was the one person who always had the city of Rochester's back. There were some different of opinions of the way the language should be written and the way the bill should be written between the city and the Mayo Clinic. And Kim Norton and the House, and I think some other people who might not be so popular in Rochester, Ann Linchevsky and Senator Skoye, Senator Bach, they made very sure that we, the elected officials in Rochester, were always going to be in control of the development that came with DMC. That said, we are 100% committed to the success of DMC. However, we don't want those decisions to go around us. Referencing a plan that was written in 1979 ahead of time and allowing freewheeling thereafter was just not acceptable for a lot of us. We directed the city attorney, much of it behind the scenes, to draw up bylaws and articles of incorporation that would ensure that we, the elected officials, had the oversight of DMC and the $128 million that we're putting into DMC. This was very important to us. We also put in some clauses that any of those changes to the bylaws or articles of incorporation had to come back to the city council. That doesn't mean we can't change them. That doesn't mean we're not willing to change them, because we are very committed to making this successful. What that means is these points of discussion and disagreement are going to happen in public, with one exception. And I want to be very clear that when I was giving praise to Representative Norton. In these discussions, the two key players from Rochester were Representative Norton and Senator Senjum. Senator Senjum took more of the Mayo Clinic approach and was not on the same page with the Rochester, Minnesota City Council. You might have noticed that many times I would tweet every single day that the City Council of Rochester unanimously supports the House version of the DMC bill and not the Senate. That was very specific guidance and reminders to let folks know exactly where the City of Rochester stood. The House was much more supportive of keeping the Rochester City Council in control. Why do I bring up some of this now? I think there have been some rather ridiculous statements made in the media, and here's what I'm fearful for. The one way that the City Council is going to lose our ability to control the growth of our city, and again, if you don't like what we're doing, you can fire us every time we're up for election. That's the great thing about republics like we have. You can fire the elected leaders if they don't do a great job. You can't do that with a private corporation with laws that usurp local control. I am concerned that behind the scenes there are already discussions that there's going to be an attempt at the legislature to change some of the powers vested in the City Council right now. I want to make the community aware of that because I will fight that every step of the way. I will expose it every step of the way, and I want you all there with me fighting it every step of the way as well. This DMC is something that should benefit our entire community. It's going to create a tremendous number of jobs, but it's also going to create a tremendous number of low-wage jobs. That means we need housing for these folks. We need transportation for these folks. We need to build a community and take care of basic infrastructure needs and even things like schools and parkland that are going to accommodate all the new people. We as the City Council have our eye on the prize as the entire community. The DMC authority is going to be more focused on DMC. What I don't want to see is many of those places, some of them in the South, where you have areas of prosperity and areas that you hide from public view. Rochester is great because we have a lot of great areas pretty much throughout our community. That's my focus in this. And I think it's very important, and I'm going to do everything I can as a local elected official. Now that we have great provisions in place by way of the Articles of Incorporation and by way of the bylaws that are in place that are going to protect the public, and any attempt whatsoever at the state or local levels to change that and take that power away from your elected officials, I'm going to expose that and I'm going to bring that to the public. What bothered me so much about the appeals that were made at the City Council meeting, and I'm always careful not to shoot the messenger. People told the lobbyists there to come say what they were doing. Those were not the people making those decisions. I'm very respectful of that. But, Kathleen Harrington from the clinic and John Wade from the chamber both came to our City Council meeting and told us, why don't you hold off on passing these Articles of Incorporation and bylaws? Yet, neither one of them could tell us what was wrong with those Articles of Incorporation and bylaws. And I'm sure the groups funding them very much had some problems with it, but they wouldn't say it in public. We specifically asked that those concerns be addressed in writing to the City Council ahead of us taking those votes, because then we could have considered it. But clearly that was not something that was desired. So in the interest of transparency, by a 6-1 vote, we approved the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws, and they're in place. Now you might have seen Senator Senjum in the newspaper criticizing us over the bylaws. What I want to be very clear is that when the bill finally got done, Representative Norton worked very hard with the city to make sure we got the provisions we want. Senator Senjum's version and what he was pushing for did not get done. All you need to know is that, the side that crafted the bill that protected the city of Rochester, that Representative Norton and her allies, Representative Norton felt that what we, the City Council, did was within the spirit of law. The fact that Senator Senjum did not agree with what we did being in the spirit of the law speaks more to the fact that the things that he was fighting for, which was not the position of the city of Rochester, did not get done. So I think there's a huge amount at stake here for the community. I am 100% committed to the success of DMC, the transparency of the DMC, and the civic oversight of DMC. And what I'm going to fight hard against, and I'm going to expose any attempt, anything I hear whiff of lobbyists working to change some of the oversight provisions, any elected officials fighting to change provisions of the, of the bills up at the state, or any attempt locally to change things where the public doesn't have insight into what's being done. I'm going to make sure that you all know about that. And at that point, we need to make sure that we are in charge of our community. So I know it's not my intent to create division between any of the parties here, but my commitment is to the entire city of Rochester, and there are some things that very much concern me about this. So I do thank you. I know I got a lot of support for saying what I said about the importance of transparency in this, and it is something that's very important to me, and we're going to continue doing this. But I think it's important to keep on our local elected officials and make sure that they're doing the will of the city of Rochester and not the will of any special interests or lobbyists that are lobbying them. Together, we will be very successful. Everybody understands how important the Mayo Clinic is to Rochester and how Rochester would not be Rochester without the Mayo Clinic. Where we sometimes sell ourselves short is we sometimes forget how important Rochester is to the Mayo Clinic and how the Mayo Clinic would not exist without Rochester. And I'm not willing to sell ourselves short. We are a special place. We don't have to play second fiddle to anybody's, and we don't have to ever lower our standards. So I'm going to be there every step of the way fighting for higher standards. Thank you for all the support you've given me. I promise I will continue to fight for transparency and responsible oversight of anything that happens as part of any economic development package. It's been a busy and exciting July. Thank you everybody for your support and giving me the opportunity to be here and work on your behalf.